one of Uncle Gary's dear friends, Pastor David Copeland, from his time serving as a bailiff at the White County Courthouse, would like to share a few words. He will then be followed by a reading of a poem to the family by his niece, Jeanette Parchman Irwin.
Well, I'm honored today to be part of this service. Gary and Miss Helen have been friends of ours for about 13 years. And Gary and I served together at the White County Sheriff's Department he worked there for about 2 years, I guess. So my stories are all going to be related to that. Now, she asked me to tell some funny stories, and as you've already heard, there's plenty of those to go around. And my problem was culling them down. But I just want to share 3 with you just real quickly. And the first one has to do with his driving. I see Phil smiling back. Jeremiah knows, Nappy knows. I don't know if Nappy took lessons from him or not, but there's similarities in that. But anyway, let me just say this to begin with. If you had somebody that was being stubborn about giving their heart to Jesus, let them ride with Gary. That would take care of the problem. I think I gave my heart to Jesus 10 or 12 times one time when I was just riding one day with him. I mean, it was an experience. And one of the things I found out is that Gary, this was amazing to me because he rode in those helicopters in the military on an aircraft carrier, but he could not ride in the passenger seat of a car. And I found it out one day. We were out serving papers. I was driving and going down the road, and Gary said, "Hey, Dave, can you stop for a minute?" And I thought, and he opens the door and gets out of the car. I thought he was looking for something. I thought he lost something. He lost something, all right. I didn't know he had cookies on him, but he lost them right there by the road. But so I changed spots with him, and Gary was sick if I drove or anybody else drove, and I found out I was pretty sick when he drove too. But and a strange thing, and my friend Phil and Gary's friend Phil Nillis has pointed this out, that he had a strange way of driving in the sense that if we were on blacktop, he would go extremely slow. And you're like, "Come on, Gary, you got to get down the road." But the minute you hit a gravel road or a dirt road, he became a NASCAR driver. It was horrifying, I'm just telling you. But anyways, it was an experience riding with Gary Graham. It was always fun. And another story I have to tell, that we were in circuit court one day. He was the bailiff. I think it was Matthew that shared that Gary liked to take naps. That didn't change when he was in court, but anyway. We were in circuit court, and he was bailiff that day. So he's out front, so he had to stay awake that day. And I was standing by the door, and it was a very serious charge. And maybe a Class Y felony, which big as they get. And the trial had gone on and on and on, and finally they took a break from court. They recessed, and there was a few people still milling around in the audience, and the defense attorney was still sitting there with the defendant was still sitting there, but the judge was gone and the prosecutor was gone, and often we would go up and talk to the bailiff if there was anything we needed to talk about or anything like that. So I start walking towards Gary. Now he served on a helicopter. He taught in a woodworking shop with all those loud machines. He thought he was whispering, I'm convinced. Unless he's hearing one like that either. But anyway, he thought he was whispering. You got to realize again, there's the defense lawyer over there, defendant over there. And I walk up to Gary and he says, "Hey, Dave," and he always called me Dave. "Hey, Dave, what do you think?" "I think he's guilty of sin." I was like, "Don't say that. We're going to have a mistrial, man." She never had a problem knowing what Gary thought about something, that's for sure. And he was usually right. The last story I'm going to share with you was one that Gary would never live down. It's still legend over there at the Sheriff's Department. I see Jeremiah nappy laughing. They probably know what I'm talking about. Back in those days when we transported prisoners, we'd have to take them to prison sometimes. We didn't have enough tasers to go around. We hadn't had them very long. We didn't have enough. Well, that's another story too. On the day that we took taser training, we could have opted out of being tased. It wasn't required. Phil and I were going to opt out. We didn't want to do that. Why suffer, right? I mean, well, then a little young, barely almost just out of high school young girl got up there and she got tased. And then old Gary got up there and got tased. And Phil and I said, well, we can't chicken out now. So I always blamed him for that. But anyway, we only had a few tasers and we didn't have enough for everybody to carry. And when we transported prisoners down to Malvern, we had to go in each morning, unlock a door or a drawer in a desk and pull out the taser. And we'd always have to test it before we went. And to make sure it was working, make sure it was charged, all those kind of things. Now the procedure for that was you pull the taser out and then you pull the cartridge out of it and then you turn it on, look at the charge and pull the trigger and make sure it works. Of course, you pull the cartridge out, so it's no problem. Well, Gary did that one day and he forgot one very important step. And he shot the wall with the taser. Those 2 holes are still there as a memorial to Gary. But what made it worse? Now, in his defense, almost everybody in judicial has done that at one time or another. Jeremiah shot the floor, I shot a drawer. I mean, it happens if you get that step. But Gary shot the wall, and in his panic, he grabs the wires to try and pull it out. And so we never let that down. It was really pretty funny. So those are the stories I want to tell. In telling those stories real quickly, I've known Gary for 13 years now, I think it is. Miss Helen and Gary and Phil and Rita Nillis went to go eat breakfast every Saturday. We've spent many hours together, laughing, telling stories, and just had a good time and really grew to love them both. And as I was telling these stories, I told them one because they're funny and everybody think, yeah, that's Gary. But also I thought, Gary in his lifetime, like all of us, are on a journey driving down a road called life. And along the way, he really hit some rough spots sometimes. Losing his children, I can't imagine. And illness and whatever else life throws at him. But he kept on traveling. And he did it with joy. And he had a lot of events that shocked him in his life, I'm sure, losing his son and his daughter and others that he loved in his health. But one thing that won't shock me nor shock you is that someday I'm going to see Gary Gramity again. Even though life led him down a tough road sometimes, even though life was shocking and hurtful at times, he and Miss Helen faced it with tremendous grace and faith and strength. I've always admired that. And I won't be shocked to see him in heaven someday, because the reason they had that strength, that faith, that peace was because he had placed his faith and his hope where it couldn't be taken away. And that was in Jesus. And I'd encourage you today, if you haven't, put your faith where he put his. And no matter where the road of life leads you, no matter what life brings that's shocking to you and painful to you, Jesus will see it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.